Love me some entry-level positions that require 5 years experience and a degree that shows only book smarts. You know what's crazy? Oh, I saw on Twitter, there was a singular tweet in my For You that was shown to me. It was some guy celebrating. He was like, yeah, just graduated. Yeah. It was a bunch of college graduates, like at their graduation. They popped the confetti. Everyone's like, woo. And there's one guy holding up a laptop showing ChatGPT. Like he's like showing what got him his degree and basically like implying that he used that for everything. And we talked about this the other day about like everyone using stuff like that to graduate nowadays. And I'm like, oh, that's so scary because we're completely devaluing all of it. A lot of people probably saw it because it was like a really, you know, a highly liked tweet. First of all, I wouldn't show that because if the wrong person sees it and they want to make you into a spectacle, they might pull your degree, right? Even if it's known that you've done this, I wouldn't show it. That's number one. Number two, all the students using it, I mean, they're just showing that like education doesn't mean anything anymore. And I'm curious to see more studies happen, but there's studies happening right now where they're trying to see what happens to you and and basically how smart you are and how educated you are if you're just using these types of tools to do your schoolwork. The effect it has on cognition is pretty bad if you just rely on them. And I'm like, ugh, I don't know. I don't like that people are writing essays with this stuff and everything. You're required to use in your capstone engineering class and you're not learning anything. Right? I come from a time when none of this existed or could be used in school. So everything you did, you had to go and read, and like maybe you could use the internet for some stuff. But even then, a lot of classes required that you went to a real library and you took out a book and you had to say, like when you credited the book, you had to say what library you got it at so they could check that you could get it there to know that you used a real book. That's what I had to do. So you had to prove that you actually read through bits of a book and hold it. Like you couldn't always use online sources, or if you did, you could only from certain databases. And like hearing that you can do things so differently now is crazy. I don't know. I just try to imagine it and I'm like, I can't imagine learning anything. I think I'd have a great time in school because it would do a lot of my work for me. And then I'd get out and I'd be my pants because I wouldn't know anything, you know? It's going to be really grim for them. They're all going to get depressed. They're all going to get depressed. They're going to realize at some point that they can't do this stuff. And some of these students, I'm sure, are still trying to do it better, but like, I don't know. It's just so I feel bad for them because they're not being told, no, don't do this. You know, they're not being forced to not do it. One of you said your university tends to treat AI generated work as plagiarism with some few exceptions. Yeah. It should be. Imagine getting operated on. Not even going to your GP. Imagine going to your GP and they can't tell you information about your health without referring to something because they never properly committed anything to memory in school. Like, there's some med programs that are allowing it. A lot still aren't, but you know, it's scary. And a lot of people sneak this stuff. It's not always that their program allows it. They're just doing it and kind of getting through with it. So that's horrifying. You think there's a fix for it? I would say disallow it, but I think it becomes harder and harder to be able to tell if people are using it over time. So, you know, and especially if you have older teachers that just have less knowledge of how the internet works and all these things, they have less ability to detect it on their own. It's tough. It's tough, man. You said, I think that's a result of the world devaluing degrees in education as just something you get for a job instead of something to build skills and improve oneself. Yeah, that's the thing, right? This is like a culmination of that. A lot of people will be like, AI is the problem. Here's something to be aware of in this world, okay? A lot of people are going to start saying that these programs and AI are the problem. And the reason education is getting to this point is because of these tools. However, this has been a long time coming. We've been devaluing education for a long time, okay? And people were complaining about this before these tools in other ways, right? So it's just like, while it is true, don't drink the Kool-Aid thinking that that's the only problem, you know? It's been like this for a long while. Like, it bothered me when I was in school. I was like, so many people were there studying and all they could talk about is like, what degree do I need so I can make money? What degree do I need so I can get X job? Not like, I want to study this because I'm passionate about it, because the world just wasn't working like that anymore. And that was rough because everyone wanted to study what they wanted to and then get some sort of career within that scope, but they would instead do it in the other order. They'd be like, I want one of these 3 jobs, I think, and then I try to study this thing. Or they would study a thing that they thought just they could do because it was interesting, and then find out there were no jobs because no one, like, the whole education system just doesn't help you with any of this. You know, they just don't help you with any of that. So I don't know, it's rough. Yeah, this is a good one. The degree became a key rather than a door. Right? 100%. Education doesn't equal a degree though. You can have either without the other. Yeah, there are a lot of things you can self-study too if you just want to feel educated, but you want to feel like you just did that and you're just doing it for yourself. But if you want to go to college because you want to learn things and it really is the sort of thing that you should go to school for, like self-study is not for you or not in that thing that you're trying to do, not in that field, then you have to pay for it. And it's so expensive and it becomes a luxury, right? Getting educated just to be educated in a lot of fields is a luxury. So it's like, oh, I want to go study archaeology and history because I'm so interested in it, but I don't really want to work in it because I can't get a job. So I just want to take some extra classes. Okay, pay many thousands of dollars for each extra class you want to take on that just because you're interested. You know, it's just not doable for a lot of people. It stinks. Anyway, I think all exams should be like oral wherever possible. And I think education needs to focus more on case studies and then making presentations and projects related to things and not just writing papers or just answering a set of basic questions. It has to have those things too, but as much as possible, you have to go into these things and make people get up there and talk about it. And that's when people start to flounder. And I'm going to be honest, back in my day, before people were using AI and all these tools to get their degrees, people still didn't know shit. You'd bring them up to the front of the class. So many classes that I TA'd, I would always do this. I'd make people stand up and talk constantly. They'd be like, this is the answer to this. And I'd be like, why? You know how many calc students I asked to explain calculus? I was like, what is it as at its base level? Why are there limits? What is a limit? Why do you use a limit? Can you explain to me why we ever do this? You don't have to explain to me how at all. Why do we do this? They couldn't tell you. It's so simple too. It's so simple. It's so simple. I'd be like, why are we using something theoretical? Why are we using limits? Can you give me an example? And they couldn't answer a thing. Can you explain it? Here. You want me to explain it? I'll explain a baseline of why we use limits for some I'm going to try to do it in layman's terms. Warning, I love math. Really quick explanation. Why do we use limits? Back in the day, we had trigonometry, okay? Back in the day, I'm talking like ancient times, like early math. We had trig and stuff. And one of the things we knew we could definitely do, is we could find the area of a triangle, right? We got Pythagorean theorem, things like that. We could find side A, side B, side C. We could measure them and we could get the area, right? Easy, simple. This is like super simple because we have these defined sides. Now what do we do when we need the area of a circle? And how do we determine this using what we had, which was just area of a triangle? So you could take a circle and you could go like this and you could turn it into different triangles using like a radius, for example. And the triangle obviously has some area of the circle that is cut out of it if you make three sides, right? So you got like side, 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 ABC, right? And we can find that, but there's this big chunk right here that's unaccounted for. So the limit is, what if I just keep making these triangles smaller, and then this little line here, this little bit of area that's unaccounted for is smaller. We can keep doing this down smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller so that this little bit of area here is getting tinier and tinier. And this is kind of an example. Eventually, I mean, imagine you could just keep going down and down and down until there are a billion lines and there's very little area left that's not accounted for. So you could do these really, really, really good approximations of the area of a circle by doing this. And that's what the limit is. You're basically saying, like, is there a limit to how many times you can do this and slice this up? And how close can you get to the actual value? How close can you actually get, right? And they were finding that with a lot of simpler math that they had at the time, by just breaking it down and iterating on this process over and over, they could get really close to getting the area of something like a circle, right? So calculus, a lot of calculus, is going through problems like this and taking something that they knew definitively, like I can find the area of a triangle, and saying, how can I iterate using this simple function that I've got to try and get the area of this thing? And that is kind of like early example of when they started dealing with limits. And the calculus is just taking that style of math and going crazy with it. And that's kind of like, that's like single variable calculus. As an example, we start to get into like multivariable calculus later for way different types of problems and using different like initial kinds of formulas that we're basing all this off of. But that is the type of problem that early calculus came from. And that's why we do this.